Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Fireside chat. I'm Beatrice Nolan. I'm an AI reporter for Fortune magazine. I'm thrilled to be joined by Prashanth Chandrasekar, the chief executive of StackOverflow. You joined StackOverflow in 2019, following various roles at Rackspace Technology and Barclays Investment Bank, hold degrees from the Harvard Business School and Cornell. And under your leadership, StackOverflow has become a cornerstone of the global tech ecosystem and reaches more than 100 million developers worldwide. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for doing this, and also thanks to the Oxford for inviting us.
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe for those who are in the audience who are unfamiliar with StackOverflow and may not know its full scope, you could start with sort of a high-level overview of the business.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, StackOverflow is one of the world's largest software developer communities. We serve about 100 million people around the world. And the reason why we are useful to the community is that we are a very large knowledge base of information on all things software. So we have something like 80 million questions and answers on every possible technology topic. So a good way to visualize this, even though it's not a perfect representation, is sort of the Reddit for software developers. But this is not a discussion forum. It's a very specific authoritative knowledge base that is curated by experts in the community. So that's the foundation of the company. It's been around since 2008. And our two business lines, one is that we serve some of the largest enterprises in the world. You know, we have a private version of StackOverflow, that community curated platform that's used by the world's largest banks, many of them in the UK, global banks, and they use it now increasingly to power their AI agents inside companies, in their companies, because it's working off this authoritative knowledge. And then, of course, more recently, we launched something called Knowledge Solutions, which is all around powering the LLMs, because they leverage the data that we produce on the platform to really pre-train their models, do things like RAG and indexing. There's a tremendous number of partnerships that we've struck with all the big AI players, which I'm happy to talk about. So that's just us in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's great. And perhaps we should take it back to maybe the sort of rise of widespread adoption of AI and the launch of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And obviously that affected the developer community a lot. And I was wondering if you could walk us through what immediate impacts you saw and kind of how the platform has developed since then.
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting, I joined the company in 2019, and we always wanted to make sure that we kept the end result is that our users are always the focus. So our developers, our technologists, and their needs change over time, including in the AI context. So when ChatGPT launched in late 2023 or 2022, we noticed that a lot of people, developers, said, despite the fact that now it's highly efficient to write code using Cursor and GitHub Copilot, et cetera, they really wanted to connect with fellow community members and be able to ask them about all sorts of things. Should I trust this answer? Should I? How do I unlock? How do I undo this? Spaghetti code that's been created, et cetera. Or even just the fundamentals of how do you write, XYZ in Python and so on. So connecting community members with each other, learning about the fundamentals, very, very important. So they wanted to continue to do that on our platform, then ultimately powering, their kind of growth ultimately, because they all wanted to know how do we actually help them with their careers, how do we progress them in the context of what's happening in AI, is it going to be disruptive to their jobs, and so on. So we really focused on first things first, we made sure that the public platform was protected. So we very quickly put up anti-scrapers, et cetera. We get approximately 1 billion attempts to scrape the site on a weekly basis. It's about 900 million or so to be exact. So it's a very substantial number of attempts, but we have now blocked all that with things like Cloudflare and other things that we use with our partners so that we can do these more official licensing deals. So we did that. And then we worked with all the big AI companies. So we have partnerships with OpenAI, with Google, even with companies like Databricks and Snowflake, some of the more recent startups like Moveworks, that's going to be part of ServiceNow, and all the big cloud providers are all partners. And what they do is, so we effectively establish this symbiotic relationship where they can leverage the ongoing data from the platform on an official capacity. So then we can get paid for that. And then we, on a recurring basis, we're able to invest that back into the community so that we can do all the things I just mentioned around our mission to help our developer community. So that's the first set of things. Secondly, we embedded AI features into all parts of our products. So on the public website, if you go to StackOverflow.com, you will see something called AI Assist, that is not only providing you with, it's an OpenAI powered partnership where you can get generative AI, that experience in natural language prompting, but it's grounded in the 80 million questions and answers on the site. So you're able to learn, if you're an early programmer, you're able to say, okay, how do I do this in Kubernetes, which is a specific concept, and you're going to get a whole bunch of answers from the attributed content from the community, which is going to surface, and as well as give you sort of the general guidance that now generative AI tools do. So that is a big part of it. We've launched things like code challenges. We've launched human-to-human expert chat on the website. So if people want to go and connect with people in our community who are, let's say, transformer experts, you can go do that now. The world's experts are on our site. So we're one of those really, I think, gems of the internet where you can trust the advice that's coming out from the site. You're going to be able to trust the people on the site because they've all been community vetted. They all have reputation scores that are hard to get and somewhat difficult to to gamify in a negative way. And then on our enterprise business, we did the same thing. We incorporated a lot of AI features into that. We've launched something called MCP server, Model Context Protocol, so that companies can use our private knowledge base, StackOverflow, all the big banks as an example use it, to power their AI agents, so it's working off of authoritative information inside their companies using this human curated knowledge base that we've created and sold into companies. And that's been a very fast growing business for us in addition to the data licensing. So long way of explaining, the transformation of StackOverflow has been very, very significant over the past couple of years because people know us mostly as the public website from 2008 that created a big impact. But over the past few years, we've very dramatically changed both the revenue profile, the business profile, and the incorporation of AI in many, many aspects. So hopefully that's helpful.
I know that one thing that you get from the community as well is a lot of insight into how developers are actually using these AI tools as well. I was wondering if you could walk us through some of the biggest shifts you've seen and how people are actually utilizing these tools.
Yeah, I mean, our community is amazing. Maybe there are people in the community in the audience today, and every year we send a survey out to our community members, and we had about 50,000 people that responded this past year, a few months ago, and they wrote back on all sorts of things on AI. We had asked very specific questions. Few statistics stood out. The adoption of AI tools in software development has absolutely gone up. So approximately 85% or so of our user base, our community members, are using AI tools for software development. So not surprising considering all the noise around it and the good momentum. At the same time, and that, by the way, was 70% or so last year, so it has gone up, so that's good. At the same time, this year, the trust level of AI outputs was quite fascinating. Last year and the year before, only about 40% of the community members trusted the AI outputs coming out from GenAI tools. This year, there's a drop to 29% in our community. So that's interesting, and definitely stood out to us is that there is a trust gap, and I'm sure you've heard from folks earlier today that adoption, especially in companies, I think is quite difficult. It's multifaceted. It's a people problem. Not only is it a security and data governance problem and all the things that you have to deal with to incorporate AI well, but it is a large change management effort, especially when it potentially does threaten your job, and we can talk about job displacement, et cetera. But that trust level, I think, was quite fascinating for us to see drop.
Yeah, I think the trust thing is really interesting. And I know you've spoken a bit about, in terms of metrics, beyond traditional web traffic in sort of AI, increasingly AI first world. What kind of metrics and new measurements are you using to measure that?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who is in the content business hopefully has really rethought, how their business model has to change for them to actually do well. Because I think if you're a content site, literally the world has turned 180 degrees over the past 2 years, very, very rapidly. Because previously the implicit agreement was you would go to Google and you would be able to get a link to your website where you're able to then monetize that through ads and so on. Thankfully, we're not an ads. We have a very small advertising business. It used to be a lot bigger many years ago, but given everything I just described, it's only about less than 20% of our company's revenues. But people come there for the specialized audience. But if you are a 100% advertising-oriented platform, like many of the content sites, publishers, et cetera, that implicit agreement has been changed. So for us, I think the world is not going to be driven by traffic as much anymore because Google itself has been disrupted. And people are going now to the new form factor, which is ChatGPT, to get their information. So what is more likely to happen is people will lean into their brands. They will lean into the authority of their subject matter, the ability to get attributed in the Gen AI response. All those things are going to be a lot more meaningful and important. How many times does your content actually show up in the citation, so that then that can be used as an authoritative reason for people to come to you? And our site, and I think that's why you're seeing somewhat of a splintering of content sites on the web, where people, I think, are going for specialized expertise in different places, because the amount of AI slop is only going to increase. I mean, I think somebody mentioned the stat earlier today. It's like 50% of what's being produced on the web today is AI generated. And that's, that's quite troubling if you think about, like, where are you going to go for authoritative content that you can trust, leave alone train the LLMs with novel information that human ingenuity can produce. So I think that's important. And we're one of the only few places, I believe, that happens at scale. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's something we think about in the media industry as well, similarly working with content. And then another similarity is these licensing deals that you spoke about earlier as well, and that becoming a new revenue stream for content platforms. I know you've signed a few licensing deals. Is this becoming a significant revenue stream for you? And then also with models improving, do you have concerns about how this might play out as a long-term business strategy as well?
Yeah, I think there are a few questions there. I think it is quite nascent, I would say. I think we are part of several initiatives. So yes, we've gone directly, as I mentioned, and worked with all the big AI companies, all the big cloud providers to strike these licensing agreements. These are recurring revenue deals, very important. They're not sort of these one-time use it and leave it kind of situations, which would be, would not be good if that's how they structured them. That's important. And so that's one dimension. I think there's also kind of a long tail. There's a few other initiatives where we're participating, including with our partners Cloudflare, to be able to do this a little bit more at a governance layer, to be able to say, here's the policy in which how you can access our website. If you want to actually access it, here are the rules. Here's what you would have to pay for. It's almost like pay to scrape. And we are also working with other nonprofits, like there's something called the RSL initiative, which we recently joined them. That's a nonprofit that is similar to what robots.txt was for the traditional web, but now being modified from the context of AI. And when AI is going to be the predominant traffic that's going to be on the web, there's going to be a lot more AI agents floating around the web than there are going to be humans, definitely, right? And so in that context, how are the agents going to know, what they can actually, retrieve information on, and should they pay for it? Should they not pay for it? So that entire economy is right now being defined. And so we're in that very early stages. We're part of that, and we're one of the obviously big content sites that will need to sort of lead with that on that front. So yeah, is it sustainable? Yes, I think there are two conditions to it. One will be that it'll be very important for AI companies to operate with a responsible AI attitude, to say, okay, let's do the right thing, because hopefully they realize if they don't actually do the right thing, that the data that they depend on to train their LLMs, even in the case of synthetic data, which there's a lot of funding going into that space, even if that happens, it's going to take a while for synthetic data to truly replace human-generated content. I don't know exactly, I can't prognosticate when, but there's certainly attempts to do that. But human-generated data, authentic information, cutting-edge information based on the brilliance of people in this room and students in universities like this one, has to propel LLMs forward. So I think, so it's really a combination, humans and AI coming together to do the best work. So yeah, I think the goal will be to create something sustainable. I think business commercial agreements will definitely be set up to make them sustainable.
And then maybe to talk about, I know the community contributions are so valuable to the platform, and what kind of steps are you taking to ensure that proper attribution and prevent misuse of community content? Well.
Yeah, I think it's a requirement in all our commercial agreements with our AI companies. So, for example, if you go to OpenAI and go to ChatGPT rather, and you ask a technical question, and you click on sources, you will see a StackOverflow link in that source link. If you go to Google Gemini, who's another one of our partners, you go to Google Gemini Code Assist, you will see the answer that is a technical answer, but you will see the source back to StackOverflow in that answer. So we are mandating attribution as part of these agreements, so that, that we're not expecting traffic to come through from people clicking on those links necessarily, but we're also just wanting to make sure that people know, one, that it's an authoritative answer. We're giving credit to the person that actually went and spent their time writing out the explanation that ultimately the AI trained on. And then finally, we're also working with these partners to produce bi-directional integration, so they can actually post answers or post questions rather from these Gen AI tools into Stack Overflow directly. So we are working on reverse integrations because we want to go wherever the developer is or wherever the technologist is. And if they're in Gen AI tools, great. If they have a question, great, ask it there, but it'll show up on our platform.
And maybe we should also talk about the educational side of this. I think one thing we're hearing a lot, especially for software engineers and developers, is that the rise of things like vibe coding and things like that, and the fears about entry-level jobs, especially for software engineers. And you have such a deep knowledge of the developer industry. I'm wondering how you think developer education is changing with the rise of AI-powered tools, and what impact you see that having on the labor market as well.
Yeah, I think great set of questions. So vibe coding obviously is all the rage. If you're in San Francisco, it's very hard not to be in a Saturday kind of vibe coding session. But I think if you look at our own community, I think we have something like 25% or so of folks in our community that are using vibe coding in a professional capacity inside companies. So that doesn't mean that it's not, the direction of travel is that it's a phenomenal aid. We use it in our company, by the way. We use vibe coding to prototype several new features. Our AI Assist feature that I mentioned previously, which is now on StackOverflow.ai, was originally vibe coded when we first started out by our designers. And so it's really great for prototypes and to get things going, to visualize, to move forward on the MVP, et cetera. And I think that's good for somebody who's trained, understands it. It's also very good for non-developers to just articulate their view and not waste precious engineering hours much further down kind of the ideation funnel, right? So they actually can test a lot of things, talk to users, talk to developers about this kind of concept that we've created, and then only decide, okay, is it worthwhile for us to go build with true engineering capacity? So I think it's a tremendous tool. It's very, very useful, vibe coding. But having said all that, I think there is this aspect of the impact on jobs. And we do see obviously early statistics around early programming jobs. Wow, seems to be a party up there. There's the early programmer jobs are, I think, are definitely under duress because you've got people in companies. There's two forces in kind of play. One is you've got CFOs asking, I just invested millions of dollars on AI software over the past couple of years. Where am I seeing the return? So there's going to be ROI pressure in the system, number one. Number two, you've got a tremendous amount of macroeconomic headwinds in various parts of the world, whether that's inflation, whether that is the money printing issue, whatever it may be, there's a push generally to be more productive, right? So you're seeing that in all the job cuts, et cetera. So both those forces, and there will be some conflation of around the correlation of what's causing what. You'll probably see some headlines that say AI caused job losses. It may have been actually the macro issue that the company was facing, at least for now, and it may change over time. But both those reasons, I think, will cause people to go after junior programming jobs or junior developer jobs, because it is the one that is most easily replaced because of vibe coding tools. It's like the simple stuff. It's the things that you can go use Cursor to do. I haven't coded in like 2 decades, but I picked it up on a weekend with Cursor and I was able to write stuff, and I'm not a very good programmer, right? So the point is that if I can do it, I'm sure there are a lot of people doing it. And if that's the case, then it's going to be, I think, quite I think painful for the early graduates. It does create a longer term issue because we all know if you don't actually invest in that early funnel, you're not going to have much of a funnel to upgrade or to promote up rather into the mid-level programming roles and senior programming roles over time. So there is a little bit of a very odd structure at the moment because of these forces I just explained, that I think there will be a reckoning at some point. And so that's why you're hearing about, the 2026 is going to be the year of ROI for AI, because everybody's like, wait, okay, where am I seeing the benefit, right? So one of those things. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on the system. Yeah.
Yeah, and then perhaps, on the subject of conflicting headlines, what we've also seen on that is really mixed studies and results about AI's impact on productivity.
Yeah.
So from what you're hearing, like, are developers generally getting value from these tools, and like, in what way are they?
Yeah, I think we have two vantage points. One is our public community, where the 100 million people, they tell us how productive they are feeling. And then we have our entire enterprise side, where we talk to CTOs, CIOs, VPs of engineering literally every day. I had a customer meeting in Germany yesterday where we had this conversation. And there is, generally speaking, what's happened, I think the enterprise use case is probably more appropriate, is that last year, and maybe over the past 18 months, with all this testing and trialing of AI tools, everybody carved out a somewhat self-selecting group of people inside their companies to be like the cutting edge folks to go test out a bunch of AI tools. And they actually saw some really great productivity stats. I think 30-40% productivity for that group. It's a small experimental bleeding edge group, if you will. And then they very quickly said, oh, this is awesome. 30-40% productivity report goes up to the senior, let's call it the CTO, CFO, dangerous place to go. And then, okay, let's just get that across the company. So then basically you're expecting 30-40% productivity savings across a large organization based on that one test trial, of the AI tool. And the reality is, when I was in a meeting with all the very large organizations, where I was brought in to sort of as the expert on certain topics, and they all are finding it extremely difficult to roll it out across the company because of all sorts of reasons. There's data privacy, residency, there's security, there is, of course, the people challenge. Let's not forget a very large chunk, which is, as I briefly alluded to before, you're talking about, effectively asking people to use these AI tools, mandating it, almost saying, look, dig your own grave, because you're also hearing on the other side that is to actually drive productivity. So it's actually quite difficult to actually do that. So that's where people are. So I think productivity for these larger rollouts have been less, single-digit percentage points based on our research, which is like quite surprising.
Yeah, I mean, on the enterprise side, I know there was that MIT study recently as well that said a lot of these AI pilots were struggling to sort of get off the ground in these big companies. So I don't know if you have recommendations or where you see the struggles in adoption.
Yeah, I think it has to do with, I think there's some obvious things, right? But in terms of previous cycles, even with the cloud cycle, it was about how do you drive cloud adoption. There are certain aspects that you have to sort of really rethink. And the potential for AI is massive. Like, we all know that, right? It's just a matter of time where it gets digested through the system, and it's going to be quite rocky along the way, as I explained. But I think having people that start using these tools on a daily basis, for example, we use vibe coding tools because we actually find it to be productive for our ideation. We have 1,000 ideas. Let's go and vibe code several of them, and then let's pick the best one based on user input and feedback. So it should be framed as more of an augmentation tool inside companies. And I think the fear of job replacement, I think, should be, people need to sort of bring that back back to ground, unless that is the objective, because I think some CFOs and some executives will probably be looking at AI as like a fantastic way to drive cost out. And in that case, you should just read through it and basically decide if that's the best place for you or not. But generally, if that's not the intent, then I think framing it as like, look, you're going to be able to unlock tremendous productivity for yourself to then go do things that you actually enjoy doing, versus sort of the craft of writing code or spending a lot of silly time on simple things, right? So I think framing, it's a framing inside the company point.
And my last question, because I want to leave some time for you guys to ask some questions as well. But I think a nice place to end is within StackOverflow itself. How are you using AI technology, and how do you balance automation with what we talked about, maintaining trust and attribution and stuff?
Yeah, so I think like I mentioned, we use a lot of vibe coding tools to prototype a lot of ideas. Our AI assist feature on StackOverflow.com or StackOverflow.ai came from vibe coding. Our chat feature was also vibe coded early on, which we've also launched human-to-human chat. We now have challenges, which are code challenges inside, also vibe coded initially before we launched it after getting user input. So almost everything we've built most recently to build new features on the site over the past 18 months or so have all used some component of the new age AI stack. And we have encouraged our developers to use it because like we're not going to add people because we became profitable last year as a company. We're growing. So similarly, as a company, a guy who runs the company, and saying, look, we have to use what's available to us to be able to be most productive. So if we don't need to add, let's say, 50 other people to build all these new features, let's see what we can do with all these early prototyping tools to be able to get a lot of input. So I think, so for us, we use quite a few of those. We use Cursor, we use, we're big Microsoft partners on our enterprise side, we're big Google partners on our public platform. So we've given our access to our team to all the tools for them to experiment and use in the context of building the things that we need them to go build, but in rapid form. And so we're constantly testing, is it making a difference? Is it moving the needle? And encouraging them to do it. Yeah, we have an entire initiative focused on this. And of course, every Friday when I send an email to the company, I talk about the ways in which they're using our product and so on. And so it's, it has to be done at all levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. And yeah, I think we're ready to turn to the audience. Russ? One there. Whoever. We'll come to you next.
Thank you very much for the Fireside chat. Very fascinating. What I'm wondering is that I would imagine when you say that you're expecting a web where there are going to be more agents than humans, that the type of digital information architecture for a website that is ready for or well adapted for agents and machines is probably going to look a little bit different than information architecture built for, let's say, SEO optimization. That's different for UX for community building purposes. And so I'm kind of curious if that's something that you're needing to grapple with, and if so, how you're thinking about those trade-offs.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. I think the web that's been built today has been built for humans, just foundationally. And where we're headed is the web that's built for agents, because they are going to be the predominant user. That is going to require, I think, a fairly large amount of re-engineering or re-architecting, maybe is a better word. And so there are many components. There are actually startups that have started on this topic. There are kind of like more frameworks that are, the RSL initiative that I mentioned is another example of that, where we're setting the rule sets for agents to access websites, to say, look, do you have the permission to go and scrape, or do you not? If you do want to, then you got to pay for it. Okay, here's how you pay for it. Here's how you automatically exchange value on the website as an agent. There's so much to go think about versus, everything else that we do as humans on the web. So it's a very early stage concept, but it's certainly where the world is headed. So yeah, we're a participant in it versus sort of somebody who's necessarily like building the architecture, if you will. Yeah.
I think we had one more over here. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, thank you. So I think you said something like it has to be the case that human-generated data still remains part of the picture, even when these companies can generate synthetic training examples.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to challenge that and to ask you to think about the futures where that's not the case, right? Where synthetic data is as good or better than human-generated data.
Yeah.
Where talking to an AI is as good or better than talking to the best humans.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of just curious, in these futures, where do you see Stack Overflow?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's probably a future or a kind of version of the future that could end up in that direction. And so even with that concept, where let's say synthetic data is plenty, let's say to train pre-trained models, it's one of our revenue sources. We've obviously benefited from that. It's our fastest growing business over the past couple of years, because as AI companies wanted our data, that's good. But I think in the future, that's why our mission basically is made up of three things: cultivate community, power learning, and unlock growth. And it's all centered around the human for us. And so for us, cultivating community is like connecting people with each other, because even if you're engaging with AI tools to do a whole bunch of things, do you believe that you're going to need to be able to chat with a fellow expert on a topic? We believe yes. We believe it's going to be for various reasons. It could be for feeling like a sense of camaraderie. It could be a sense of Is this secure for me to use in my company? What about this? I seem to have gone into sort of this endless loop on Cursor. How do I unravel it? By the way, the general statistic is about 40% of our users are finding it less productive to use AI tools because they're spending a bunch of time unraveling AI code, because it's a whole bunch of like spaghetti code that's been created. So at least for now. But so that's cultivate community. Power of learning is like, we are learning people. Like I think we're obviously one of the best institutions in the world. And irrespective of whether or not you're able to use your AI tool and you're leveraging it for that purpose, you want to be able to learn new concepts, right? A new developer, if they want to get into the space, they're going to use a vibe coding tool. Perhaps they'll start on Cursor, but how do they learn? How do they challenge themselves? How do they know they're on a structured way to understanding the fundamentals of various things? We believe you should know the fundamentals in addition to using AI tools to be employable even. Even in our own interviews at our company, when we hire developers, we have a very specific path now to say, you can probably use AI tools, but we want to test you on the fundamentals. And if you're very good at using AI tools and don't know the fundamentals, that's a problem, because at the end of the day, it's on you if something breaks. It's not on the AI tool. And then finally, the unlocking growth aspect is how do we make sure, because people spend a lot of time helping each other out on our platform, they all get reputation points on the site. So they're the world's experts, and they've been noted as the world's experts on XYZ topic. That is extremely useful in a world when there's going to be a lot of displacement of jobs in the context of people looking for new opportunities. We're about to announce a partnership very soon about this, where it will show up, our StackOverflow reputation will show up in various places that are very relevant for developers or technologists to get jobs. And so that you're getting, let's say, the positive karma of your contributions over the past many years. So that saying you helped other people out, now you get to accrue that as part of your job search. So there are many dimensions with which we will help our developer community, and of course on the enterprise side, as I mentioned, people need a knowledge base to be able to power their AI agents that is curated and with subject matter experts. So data licensing, we believe in that scenario, that world where if synthetic data is the way in which they want that, great. That it may not be central for us at that point, because we have a diversified revenue stream based on what I just described.
And any more questions?
Hello from Turkey. My name is Seçkin.
Nice to meet you.
And how you motivate write new topics in generative AI worlds?
So how do I motivate?
How you motivate write new topics and in the generative AI world? Past decades, and the content is the king. We always said content is the king.
Yeah.
But in the generative AI area, maybe 5 years later, people don't want to write a new topics, or people don't want to post a new solution.
Yeah.
So how you motivate the people?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. So I think what's interesting about StackOverflow even, or any, let's say, public site, very unique, because the motivation for people to come to our site, even from the beginning, has never been about making money, as an example, right? It's literally been about helping their fellow community member and their developer. Nobody gets paid for doing it. You don't force people to do it. You're there to help each other out. That's the motivation. It's literally a gift to humanity. That's basically how people have thought about it. And so what motivates them is that the joint mission of really sort of collating the world's information and to be able to really make sure that they are contributing to the world's knowledge around that particular topic. So in the future, of course, there's this aspect of incentivization. So it's an extrinsic motivator there as well, which is the reputation system that I explained, is that once you do get recognized for your contributions, the good work that you're doing, then that should accrue to you if you want it to accrue to you in a positive sense. So I think it's a combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, was what I would say. Like, we have basically been able to do it for this first few decades, first 15 years or so, by saying, okay, let's help each other out, and you could definitely use the karma points or the reputation points that you earn for your benefit. In the future, it may be a combination of those two things. It may be other things in addition to that that motivates people to contribute to sites. But we have to just see as things evolve. And I think what we are trying to do is make sure that minimum people get attributed and acknowledged for their responses, which is why attribution is really, really important for us in the Gen AI world. If ChatGPT is going to say, this answer came from, what's your name again? Sorry?
Seçkin.
Seçkin. So Seçkin, all the way from Turkey, wrote this answer, and that's being used by 1 billion people because it was like, you're the expert on whatever topic. That's good. Like, that means that, you get the personal pleasure of knowing that, and you feel great about that. And secondly, that may, in an extrinsic way, accrue to you in a good way. Like, you may be known as the expert. You may be sitting in this seat, people interviewing you as like the expert on that topic, right?
Yes. So the valid data will be important.
Say it again.
Valid data will be important.
No doubt. And that's why I think going back to brands and going back to individuals and going back to authoritative sources is going to be, I think, the way of the future. It has to be, right? Yeah. Because otherwise, like, how do you trust whatever is on the web? I mean, it's very, very difficult these days to figure out what's real and what's not real.
Thank you.
We can squeeze one more for very quick. Sure.
My question is actually a little related to what he's talked about, and you also talked about the fact that trust in AI content has actually gone down.
Yeah.
As a tech leader, not as a CEO for StackOverflow, how do you see the trust being built up in the future, especially when it comes to news and journalism? Because the synthetic news thing it's actually impacting a lot of these big organizations all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's something, because we've trained some journalists in AI, and they're like, if there's synthetic news, then, how do you see that? That's
it's actually pretty horrific, actually. If you think about the AI slop being generated, that's why I think, there's places for companies like Fortune to exist, because it's like, hey, you trust Fortune, right? It's coming from Beatrice. Beatrice is an expert. She's been talking about AI for like 6 years. Trust her, right? So I think, media in general, well, I think in some ways you can actually use it to your benefit, because you can say, look, brands, this brand means something. Whereas some content site that popped up overnight that says all the same things that she might have said, but maybe looks a bit strange, you should discount that. So I think that that's why there will be a reemergence of authoritative brands, which is the same reason why we believe StackOverflow has a great future, because you can come there for authoritative, trustworthy, human-curated, expert-curated knowledge.
Great. I think that's time last, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
No problem. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.